LeetCode Problem number 76, minimum window substring. Now this is a hard problem where it gives us two strings, S and T, and what we have to do is to return the minimum window substring such that every character in T is included in the window, that is including duplicates. So something like this, where if T is A, B, C, the minimum window would be B, A, and C here, as this string is the shortest length, shortest substring that includes all the characters in A, B, and C. Now, the way I did this was to use a map to store the existing, or like to store the existing characters in the current window. So here I have declared some variables. Let me just make everything easier to read. Okay. Alright. So using this as an example, these are basically, I'll show you how the code runs. So like I said, I am using a map, and for basically every character inside string T, I'm putting it inside my map. So this map stores the character as a key and the occurrences as the value. So for this instance, if T is ABC, my map will look like this. Okay, so this is what my map looks like after the initialization, basically after this part. And here I have a left and right pointer which keeps tracks of on the window. This counter is to basically check how many characters of T that is not included in the window yet, something like that. And then I have a start and a length, and this is to get the position of the substring so that we can return it later. I think, yeah, it's over here, so we can return it later. Okay, first things first is while the right is lesser than size, which is to say that the right pointer will be iterating through the entire list. So the first thing I check is whether or not the character on the right pointer, which is A, is inside the map, which it is, and it is more than 0 as well. Right? For this instance, 1 is more than 0, so the counter will reduce, the value in the map will reduce to 0, and then my right pointer will increase. Right? So now my right is over here. And since my counter is not 0, there are still 2 characters inside my map. I'll keep on going and check whether or not this character D is inside of my map. Since it is not, the counter does not change, but the D will change, right? So it will be like this. After that, the right pointer increments again. Now we're at O. The same thing happens. It is not inside my map, or more like it's not more than 0, but actually it is not inside my map. So to not make it very long, I'll just add on to it at the right side here. Okay, then the right pointer increments and reach B. Okay, now we have a B, so over here. So the counter decrements to 1, our B decrement 0, and our right pointer continues on. Same thing for E, since there's no E. For C, okay, there is a C, right, over here. the counter decrements to 0, our C decrements to 0, and our right pointer increases. So now our window looks like this. Okay, after that, now that my counter is 0, that means I get to determine the start and length. This is to get the string, right? So while right minus left, which in this case would be, oh, I forgot to update. Right is 6, right? Minus left, 6 minus 0 is 6, and 6 is less than integer max here, which is the largest possible number an integer can have. So my start would be at the left pointer, which is 0, and my length would be 6. So that means if this were to be an answer, it would substring from 0 and 6 characters, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Excluding this character. So substring like this. Okay? Moving on, we try to reduce the window from the left to see whether or not we can shrink the window. And to do that, we increment back the pointer on the left side. So in this case, this will be A, right? So A will become 1 again. And since this character is now more than 1, it's not more than 0, sorry, our counter will increment back, which means that our counter become 1 again, and our left pointer will increment. Sorry about that. Left pointer will increment. Right pointer stays here. After that, we go back to the start of the while loop, and we do repeat the same thing again, right? So we go on, check whether or not O is more than 0. It is not, so that the value of O would decrement. You know, I would just have O and then another one minus 2. Okay, something like this. After that, right pointer increases again to D, and D is also negative 2. Actually, E is also negative 2. Means I can leave O back in. And then we reach to B again. And since B is basically there's no value, that there is 0. The value is 0. So we do not decrement the counter already, but we have to decrement the value. So this will be negative 1. We increment again, and now we reach to A, right? Which is the one that we need for this window to be valid. And when that happens, when we decrement our counter back to 0, or value A back to 0, we move our pointer up, and then we update our start and left. But since now, if we use right, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, which is 11, minus 0, minus 1, will give us 10, and 10 is obviously not less than 6, right? So we don't have to update our start and length, but instead we increment back from the left, right, to shrink the window. So what we do is D will increment. Just pretend that D has incremented. I'm not going to touch it, but basically pretend that it is incremented. So D will basically be negative 1. It is still not more than 0, so we don't do anything about the counter, and we increment our left pointer. Okay, we reach O, same thing. We don't do anything about it, so we just remove. Actually, before that, we still have to check whether or not the current window is lesser than our current length. In this case, it is not. right? 9 is still more than 6, so we don't do anything. So for O, we increment back O, and then have our left counter go back. Okay, for B, we increment back B, this will be 0. It is not more than 0, so we don't do anything to the counter, and we increment left again. Okay, so now our left pointer is at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, then we check for E, same thing, nothing happens, we go up. Okay, now that our left pointer has reached 5, 11 minus 5 is 6. Okay, so we still don't do anything because 6 is basically equals to length, right? So we don't do anything here. But for our C, since we're looking at C now, we have to increment C by 1. And since now it is more than 0, we have to increment back our counter, right? And then our left pointer moves up. Okay, after that, we continue on our right side. Our N has a decrement. I'll just put N here along with the rest of the garbage characters. But N is basically -1 now. And then we move our right pointer again. So now we reach C, right? So when we reach C, since C is more than 0, when we update this to 0, we reduce the counter as well. And we increment our right, which is over here, right? So basically it has reached the end of the string, but we still have to run the rest of the code. So while our counter is equal to 0, which it is, and we have to check whether or not our right minus left is lesser or equals, or is lesser than our length. In this case, our right is at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Like this. Let me just double confirm. Okay. And 13 minus 6 is basically not less than length, so we don't do anything about it. But we have to increment back our left pointer, right? So O will increment back. Not gonna do much about the garbage characters, but just pretend that I did increment it. For D as well, don't do anything about it. And let's increment. So now it's like this. And left is 8. Okay, so now when we check this if statement, our right, which is 13, minus 8 is actually 5, which is less than our current length. So what we have to do is to update our start to the left. So now our start is 8, and our length is 13 minus 8, which is 5. This means that currently this window holds the minimum this window holds the substring with the minimum length, right? But we still have to increment back E. Okay, don't have to do anything about it, and we increment back our left. So now we are at the actual answer. And if you look at this, if we were to count, right, our left is 9 now. So 13 minus 9 is 4. So start has to be replaced. Start will be replaced with 9. And length will be replaced with 4. And we increment back B, right? So B now becomes 1. Our counter now increases back to 1. Our left pointer increases. But that doesn't matter, because once we exit this while loop will end as well, because our right is iterated through the entire string S already. Okay, after that, now we check whether or not our length has changed, right? So if we had never entered this while loop or entered this if statement, but we will enter this if statement first if we entered this for loop, because our length is int max at the start, right? Which means the biggest possible number. So anything, so basically any possible answer will definitely be lesser than int max. But if that doesn't happen, that means we have not found a substring that satisfies t, and what we have to do is to return an empty string. But since our length has value, so what we do is we return the substring of start, which is over here, and then the length of 4, which is 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, which means this is our answer. This will be returned, and if you can see here, basically it's the same as the output the example gave. Alright, that's all I have to show. Thanks.